Hello, good evening, and welcome. I'm John Lazarus with Stories Matter and D&E Publishing. In this edition of our Mailbag series, I will field questions from viewers of the channel and try to offer insight into my experience and triumphs as a writer, and provide more guided advice to people too lazy to extrapolate information from my normal how-to videos. Now let's take a look at some of the questions. Doug from Idaho writes, "Hi John, longtime reader, love your work. I just wanted to know, what is your favorite book?" Thanks for the question, Doug. That's a tough one. I'd say it's a toss-up between Proust's In Search of Lost Time or Brown's The Da Vinci Code. Irene from Idaho writes, "Hola, John. I'm a longtime literature lover who's always wanted to write a book to earn the respect of my partner and children. But I've had some trouble getting started, so I wanted to ask, should I take drugs to get inspiration for my writing?" Great question, Irene. This is one of the more common questions I get on book tours, and I always tell people, don't waste your time thinking that drugs will suddenly make you more creative. Just take the drugs and start writing. And there's a lot of reasons to get high and write. For starters, like marriage or a visit to the Social Security office, writing is a long, arduous ordeal, and you're going to want something to spice it up a bit. But don't limit your drug use to your work hours. Use them to really experience life. Take them all day if possible. Drink absinthe on playgrounds at midnight. Smoke a blunt and see if you can walk into a microchip manufacturing facility without anybody noticing. With drugs, you'll often find yourself in more unique, dangerous situations you can use in your work later. Spencer from Boise writes, "Howdy, John. Longtime listener to your audiobooks, especially the Tobias Shane westerns, and I was curious, who inspired you to be a writer?" Interesting question, Spencer. There were a few people. I wouldn't be the writer I was today without my father. He used to inspire me to write by locking me in my room until I finished a book report, and washing my mouth out with soap if I used split infinitives. And then there was my mentor, the best-selling author Tabitha Cartwright. I'd always loved her mysteries, and it was a dream come true when I finally got to work with her. She taught me a lot about how to market myself, how to corner the market for my style of books, how to write stuff that was popular and successful without sacrificing integrity. Looking back, I wish I would have read some of the legal documents she had me sign, but still, I wouldn't be who I am without her. Next, we have Humongous from Twin Falls, who writes, "Hey John, I'm a longtime admirer, and I've always wanted to write like you, but I was wondering, should I write under a pseudonym?" Well, that's a tricky question. It really depends on your birth name. If your name is Mordecai Rabinowitz, well, whether it's fair or not, there's just a large portion of the population who's not going to buy books from you. A pseudonym is a great idea, not just to protect your personal privacy, but also to create an identity that matches your genre or writing style. George Eliot, for example, used a pseudonym to show that she wasn't irrational or emotionally unstable or prone to fits of irritability 5 days a month. And sometimes there's just really no other option. Imagine how successful James Patterson's books would be if he used his real name, Jerry Sandusky. Idaho from Nampa writes, "Hello, John. I'm a longtime shut-in who barfs at the thought of sharing physical space with other human beings. However, it seems like part of getting your name out there is getting involved with your local writing community. My question is, should I make more of an effort to connect with local writers?" Great question, Ida. I am generally of the opinion that other writers don't make good beta readers. To paraphrase Hemingway, when I read a bad book by a colleague, I hate it because it's bad writing. And when I read a good book of theirs, I stake out their apartment, leave dead animals in their mailbox, and leave false police reports in their name. So I'd stay the course. Catherine from Ontario, Oregon, but actually the Idaho side of the border, writes, "Hiya, John. I'm a longtime viewer of your YouTube how-to series. If you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?" That's a great question, Catherine. I can think of 3 things off the top of my head. First, don't be afraid to fail. Just because your first 20 books didn't earn a dime doesn't mean your family is holding you back. Second, I'd say find a good line editor. And third, I'd tell myself to warn everyone about 9/11. Kimbo S. from Nassau writes, "Greetings, John. I'm a longtime lover of literature, and I have no idea who the hell you are. Why should I read you?" Great question, Kimbo. Why do any of us read books? The answer, of course, is to make ourselves feel superior to people who don't. And of course, more books equals more superiority. So the question really, Kimbo, then, is why not read John Lazarus? I'll also add that a life without a John Lazarus book doesn't seem like a life truly lived. J.L. Picard from La Barre, France writes, Oi, John. I'm a long-time starship captain who loves a good book and a nice cup of Earl Grey tea, hot. I was curious whether or not you ever abandoned a novel halfway through, and if so, why? Great question there from J.L. Picard. Short answer here is no. I have never abandoned a novel once I started writing it. Books aren't oak trees or cats or small children. They can't fend for themselves. Those people on that page are real to me, real as my family, and to recklessly abandon them feels tantamount to murder. There are workarounds, though, if you're really struggling to finish a book. My go-to is to make it a novella and publish it under a different pseudonym. If you're worried about the quality and feel like it won't sell, try publishing it under a famous author's name, which is totally legal, by the way. I made a lot of money selling half-baked erotica under my J.D. Salinger alias. And for our last question of this section, we have H. Selden from Arcturus sector of Helicon, who writes, Salutations, John. I struggle from alexithymia, which means I am unable to feel emotions. Most people say this will affect my ability to write. What do you think? Great question, H. Selden. I hate to break it to you, but no, it will absolutely not, and everyone who told you it will is a snake and a rat bastard liar. Most people don't know this, but I too suffer from a similar affliction, though I only can't feel sympathy or compassion for other people and most animals. Either way, all a writer needs to be is thorough, brave, honest, litigious, and willing to attack critics. Hope that helps. Now we'll take a break here for a quick word from our sponsors. Today's video is brought to you by Terrell Corporation. Your neighborhood Android provider, Terrell, is dedicated to transforming labor through cutting-edge robotics and artificial intelligence to improve the safety of workplaces around the globe. Terrell Core is guided by the principles of innovation, diversity, high performance, and making you question your humanity. The latest Nexus 6 models can be utilized for a wide variety of tasks, from off-world mining, to acrobatics, to reciting haunting elegies. A call today gets you 6 months of free Voight comp tests. Terrell Core, more human than human. Our next question comes from David from Huntington Beach, California. He writes, Dear John, I'm a new writer who's just about to publish my first book. It's both an exciting and scary prospect. I'm worried that after I'm published, I won't recognize my children as I watch them sleep. So my question is, how did publishing your first book change you? Great question, David. I'll tell you what my 6th grade PE teacher told me. That's a very normal feeling and nothing to be ashamed of. But the change won't be anything that dramatic. Well, getting that first book out there was a big confidence booster and led me to grow a mustache for the next 6 months. You won't consider abandoning your family until you hit that New York Times bestseller list. David from Clearwater, Florida writes, John, I'm a successful businessman who's come into a lot of money these past 4 decades. I wanted to know, what was the best money you ever spent as an author? Great question, David. As someone who spends 10 hours a day in a chair, and also someone who had scoliosis in college and needed spinal surgery in his 30s after getting into a fight with a cabbie about not taking the Lincoln Tunnel, I'd highly recommend an ergonomic chair. Make sure to get one designed not just for lumbar support, but with cervical, thoracic, sacrum, anal, and dorsal supports as well. Charles from Chatsworth, Los Angeles writes, John, a man keeps showing up at my door asking me to subscribe to different magazines. I tell him I'm not interested, but he keeps coming back and pretends he doesn't remember me. I'm thinking of giving in so he'll go away, so I was wondering, what publications are important for authors to subscribe to? That really depends on your genre and interests. If you want to write about women, I'd suggest getting a subscription to Maxim. Anyone the least bit interested in politics should be subscribed to Harper's Weekly. For me personally, Golf Magazine was a lifesaver when I wrote 4 Under, about a group of golfers who get buried alive in a sinkhole at Pebble Beach. Marshall from Rancho Santa Fe, California writes, As a single male writer who's awkward around women and who gets erections when cashiers over a 4 smile at me, I have the hardest time writing from the female perspective. What's the most difficult thing when writing about characters from the opposite sex for you? Thanks to Marshall for that one. And don't overthink it, Marshall. Women are just like you and I. They both seek love and friendship and worry about the radical woke agenda like any of us. But for me, I have to admit, I still have trouble deciding if I should mention that my female characters are on their period or not. Sometimes they're irritable because the plot dictates it, or because the decisions of the male protagonists, and sometimes they're irritable because that's their defining character trait, but other times I feel I need to make clear that their irrationality and wild mood swings stem from a biological impulse they have no control over. It's a tough line to walk, I find. Asho from Wasco County, Oregon writes, John, I'm a down-on-his-luck agent with the Department of Labor. I'm hoping to get 00 status, but I need to blow open a big case for that to happen. So my question is, to your knowledge, what is the most unethical practice in the publishing industry? Thanks for the question, Asho. Well, when you sign a contract with Penguin, they make you swear a blood oath and then force you to stick your hand into a bag with paper wasps in it. But I think that's common knowledge. Sorry I can't be more helpful. Jim from Port Kaituma, Guyana writes, John, you're notoriously prolific. You write with such ease and confidence. Have you ever struggled through a book? What was your hardest scene to write? Great question, Jim. That was probably the semi-autobiographical confrontation between Daniel and his abusive father in the climax of my coming-of-age novella, The House on Payne Avenue. While I'm not gay like Daniel, my dad still beat me because he thought I was. But what really made that scene hard to write was that my typewriter was broken at the time, so I couldn't use the letter E. Joseph from Nauvoo, Illinois writes, My wife and I are considering going on a literary pilgrimage. She wants to go to China to see Pearl Buck's childhood home. But I want to paint my skin black and travel through the American South like John Howard Griffin in Black Like Me. What do you think? Have you ever gone on a literary pilgrimage? Great question, Joseph. Actually, just last year, the new girlfriend and I went on a literary pilgrimage. After the train disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, we took some of the children and reenacted DeLillo's White Noise. We each had existential crises and ended up shooting a man in a hotel. Kim from Pyongyang, Korea writes, I'm a man of many talents. Writer, basketball star, golfer, military strategist, Elsa cosplayer. If you didn't write, what would you do for a living? Thanks, Kim. Fun fact about John Lazarus, I never actually set out to become a writer. From the ages of 15 to 25, I had my heart set on becoming a porn star. You know, I worked out, ate right, went to all the conventions, watched it every day and took notes, sent in my tapes to some high-level producers, but I just couldn't make a name for myself. It wasn't until I started writing my own scripts for Skinflix that my friends started to tell me I had a real knack for writing. Eventually, I realized I liked the mental fantasy more than the morning workouts and protein shakes and scrotum cleanses, and I never looked back. David from Waco, Texas writes, Why can't I make any fucking money? Great question, David. It's a tough industry, that's for sure. All I can really suggest is to write as much as possible and leech off others until you hit it big. If you don't like sleeping on sofas, make up phony back ailments so you can sleep on the beds of your friends and family. Find parents with stupid kids and edit their school essays for some spare cash. Never stop the hustle. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button, and I'll leave you with this week's author quote of the week. See you on the next one.